Hi, my name's George. I'm 60. If you'd asked me a year ago what absolute emptiness was, I'd have said something from physics. Now I know. It's Austin, Texas, in December, sitting alone in a house you spent 40 years building. My wife, Susan, she left. Not for another man. She was just tired of me, of us. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks ago. My cardiologist, Dr. Schneider, said, "George, you need to do something that isn't connected to that house. Something that makes you remember that you are you, not just an empty closet." When I was 20, I often drove south, down to the Gulf of Mexico, or just threw a line into the legendary Rio Grande. It was my therapy. Susan always hated my trips. But now, she's gone. And I decided a farewell trip was exactly what I needed. A farewell to the George she knew. I bought a tiny new trailer, just enough for sleeping and a gas stove. I packed everything that didn't remind me of her. My old boots, smelling of the Colorado River Basin dirt. I pointed my truck south, past San Antonio, and all those damn new malls. My destination? Big Bend National Park. Specifically, one forgotten stretch of the river where the Rio Grande cuts deep into the canyon. A place with no internet, no cell service. Just rocks, the Chihuahuan Desert, and the water. I needed that silence to drown out the noise in my head. The noise of that single word, divorce. I drove hundreds of miles through parched land. I kept thinking about how I lost everything. About our silly fights over kitchen paint. About how she held my hand when my father died. I didn't cry. Men my age don't cry. We just get hard, like the gravel under these tires. But near the tiny town of Langtree, I realized I was waiting for something. I was waiting for this water to tell me where to go next. My destination? Big Bend National Park. Specifically, one forgotten stretch of the river where the Rio Grande cuts deep into the canyon. A place with no internet, no cell service, just rocks, the Chihuahuan Desert, and the water. I needed that silence to drown out the noise in my head, the noise of that single word, divorce. Next to her stood a travel bag that looked like it had escaped from hell. And in her hands, she held the strangest thing I'd ever seen on the Rio Grande. Not a fishing rod, but a paintbrush and an easel. I hit the brakes. The dust settled. My F-150's engine went quiet. It was so still, I could hear the stones tumbling in the Rio Grande below. I got out. My old knees complained. "Good evening, ma'am," I said. My voice seemed to scare an old coyote nearby. "Are you all right? Need any help?" She didn't turn. "I don't need help," she finally replied. Her voice was low, with a slight, indefinable accent. "Just waiting for the sun to go down completely. I'm George, from Austin. Elizabeth, from nowhere lately. I noticed the bag. It was old, heavy, dark brown leather, almost chained to her chair. Strange for an artist." "What are you painting?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "I'm painting what's left. The Rio Grande is the arm of forgetting, George. Everything you want to forget, you can throw here. But sometimes it floats back up." "You mean trash?" "I mean cargo," she said. Her canvas showed a very old, half-sunken boat in a canyon with a dark, almost black object at its center. "My husband, Edward, he was a geologist. We spent years on this river. He wasn't looking for oil, but for something else. I started setting up my small trailer. I came here to fish," I said, trying to be normal. "I'm looking for a big catfish." "You won't find the catfish you're looking for, George," she countered. "You're looking for peace. But to find peace, sometimes you have to find what was lost, then let it go." She continued softly. Edward died here a year ago. He drowned in that canyon, and he left me his final cargo. He said it was the key to my new life. And this bag," she tapped the leather satchel, "is the box of his final secrets. I can't open it. I can't start a new life until I understand it." I felt my desire for solitude vanish. All right, I came here to escape, but you seem to have brought a problem with you. What's the riddle? I was a civil engineer. I know logistics and blueprints. Elizabeth pulled out a water-stained, leather-bound notebook. It smelled of river water and mildew. Here, Edward's last notes. He wasn't writing about geology. He was writing about treasure, something hidden since the 1940s. On the first page, there's only one sentence. You have to read it, George, and maybe understand it. I opened the cold notebook. Underlined in thick pencil, it read, "Where water meets stone. Await the old lady who knows why treasure doesn't burn. The tide is not important, but the boat is. The boat, not the catch." Above us, a billion stars hung in the sky. I felt like I was in a movie. I came to catch a catfish and forget how Susan took my retirement savings. Instead, I was deciphering a dead man's code. "Treasure that doesn't burn," I mumbled. "And why old lady?" Elizabeth threw a mesquite branch into the fire. "Edward was obsessed with World War II secrets," she said. "He believed that during the war, when everyone feared sea attacks, part of the gold reserve, or something valuable, was hidden deep inland, somewhere along this cursed river." I frowned. "Gold doesn't burn." "No, George, but wood, paper, money, they burn. Edward said it was an archive. Secret documents or evidence so volatile they couldn't be kept even at Fort Knox." I picked up the notebook. The coordinates were written in an old-fashioned way, like a marine chart. They pointed about 10 miles upriver, inside the Big Bend Ranch State. "Where water meets stone could be any canyon on the Rio Grande," I said. "But the old lady, did Edward ever mention a woman connected to this?" Elizabeth looked like she'd been thinking about it for years. "He mentioned one, years ago. A little old woman who lived out in the sticks near Del Rio. She was the widow of a Texas Ranger." She had seen too much and had a very bad memory, or a very good one. I looked at my watch. I was 60, fresh off a divorce, about to look for a mysterious old woman in the desert based on a dead man's notebook. It sounded like a bad joke. "Okay," I said, "we can't go to the river now, but tomorrow we go. You'll show me the coordinates." I couldn't sleep. Elizabeth was still by the fire, watching the moon over the Chisos Mountains. "George," she said quietly, "everyone else I talked to in El Paso or Laredo thought I was crazy. They saw only an old bag and a grieving widow." "I see an old bag, a grieving widow, and a very good reason not to think about my own problems," I replied honestly. It was the first sincere thing I'd said in 6 months. The next morning, we launched my old, collapsible aluminum boat. The current was fast, as always. "The coordinates point to the mouth of the Great Canyon," I said, checking the paper map. "It's a spot called the Tatler, because the echo is so strong here. They say a whisper turns into a scream." The sun vanished as we entered the canyon. The rock walls rose hundreds of feet. The stone felt ancient. I felt small, insignificant, and that felt good. My divorce finally seemed less important. "Somewhere here," Elizabeth whispered. "This is where he met his death, and I have to know why." We traveled for about an hour when she pointed. There, look! Pressed against the canyon wall, half hidden by shadow and rocks, lay an old wooden boat. It was long, narrow, with a closed bow, a military design. It was mostly wrecked, but its purpose was clear. And in its center, in the cockpit, there was a huge, gaping hole. And that dark spot she was painting? It was there. A dark, rectangular object wedged beneath the seat. Something that clearly wasn't part of the boat. I cut the engine. The silence was deafening. We were 30 feet from Edward's cargo. "George," Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper. "We're here, but I'm afraid we've disturbed more than just Edward's rest." The canyon walls squeezed us. Every little sound here, every wave hitting a rock, sounded like a gunshot. I had the feeling we weren't alone. I tied a rope to a rock. The water was cold and murky. "I need to get to it," I said, pointing to the sunken vessel. "I need to see what that dark box is." Elizabeth gripped her bag, her eyes filled with fear. Not fear for herself, but for what lay ahead. "He was in that boat when the current dragged it," she whispered. "He knew he was going to die, George, but he did not let go of that cargo." I dove in. The water immediately flushed all thoughts of my divorce and my pension out of my head. The box was metal, heavy, wrapped in thick waterproof canvas and bolted to the hull. It was designed to withstand years underwater. It was not just valuable, it was a time capsule. I surfaced, gasping. It's a box, bolted down, very securely. And it's huge. He couldn't have brought it here alone. Someone helped Edward. "Of course," she said. "I think it was the ranger, the husband of the old lady. Edward mentioned he was one of those who covered tracks. He knew this river like the back of his hand." "So we need this old lady. We can't pull that box out ourselves." "Her name is Margaret Gray," Elizabeth said. "She lives in the half-abandoned town of Presidio, further downriver, near Marathon. Edward paid her years ago to buy land and stay quiet." The new plan, drive to Presidio. I didn't mind. When you have nothing to lose, any adventure is just a way to pass the time before sunset. We were driving along Route 67. "George, I need to show you something," Elizabeth said. "Something I didn't want to show you until we saw the cargo ourselves." She opened her leather bag. Inside, besides the notebook, was a single yellowed photograph. It showed 4 people in 1940s military uniforms standing in front of an airplane. One of them was a young, smiling Edward. He never said he was in the Army, I noted. He was, in a top-secret unit dealing with special cargo logistics. Look at the man on the right. The man looked older, with a weary face. Under the photo was written, "S.B., Keeper Forever, 1944. "S.B. is Simon Brooks," Elizabeth continued, "the ranger, Margaret Gray's husband. So they weren't just acquaintances, they worked together. On this cargo," I concluded. She turned the photo over. On the back was a very faint drawing, a map of the area. It showed the exact rock face where we found the boat. Next to it was a small circle with a cross. "Sanctuary," I read, penciled in. "Edward didn't just leave you a mystery," I said. "He left you a threat. Why did he want that cargo hidden, even when he died?" I pulled the truck over. "When I was younger," Elizabeth said, "I thought treasure was money. Now, George, I'm 54, and I know the most dangerous treasure is the truth. I'm afraid that inside that box is something that could destroy lives. And we, George, we are already deep in their game." Presidio isn't Austin. Time moves like thick honey here. We found Margaret Gray's house. The yard was overgrown, but the garden was tended. I knocked. An old woman opened the door. Maybe 85, but standing straight. She looked at us with a cold, official politeness. Not surprise, just expectation. Mrs. Gray, I'm George. This is Elizabeth. We're looking for you about your husband, Simon. She looked from my fishing boots to Elizabeth's bag. I know why you're here, she said, her voice low and dry. I should have expected you long ago. Come in. The desert is bad at keeping secrets, but good at remembering them. We found the boat at the Tatler, I told her, and the cargo inside, a rectangular metal box. Margaret sighed, a sound of deep exhaustion. It's the archive, not gold. Secret files and records about certain high-ranking officials who were ready to deal with the Nazis if the war had turned. Traitors. Edward and Simon were ordered to hide it and forget it forever. Why did Edward go back for it? Elizabeth asked. Because the archive must not be found, Margaret stated. The people it would destroy are still alive and powerful. Edward went back because someone found out and started looking. I remembered the riddle. Treasure that doesn't burn is the archive itself. The truth is eternal. The old lady was my mother-in-law. Simon often borrowed her little boat to hide from me. And the key? She pulled out a small, tarnished copper key. Simon said, if they ever come, don't give it to anyone unless they name the boat correctly. Elizabeth flipped Edward's notebook. Under a sketch of an old boat, it read, SSS. The Silent Service of Sorrow, Margaret revealed. That was their boat's real name. This key unlocks the archive's bolted restraints. But there's a problem. Simon and Edward locked the cargo with a second lock, a second key. And it is not in Presidio. Where is it? I asked. On the other side of Texas. The second part is with the man Edward called the banker. He was their liaison. His job was to ensure the archive never saw the light. But his location is only known by a code. The next page of the notebook had a sketch of an oil derrick symbol and 3 numbers, 432. We have to get that archive, Elizabeth pleaded. If it falls into their hands, it will be a catastrophe. This isn't just old news, it's leverage that will destroy entire families. Just then, we heard a heavy vehicle stop outside. Margaret shot up, fear in her eyes. They have come. I talked too long. Run, take the key, drive east, and trust no one. We bolted out the back door. My heart pounded in rhythm with the engine. I floored the gas. The dust cloud hit us as we sped out of Presidio. What did you see? Elizabeth shouted, clutching the key in the bag. A big black SUV, no license plates, and 2 guys in cheap suits. Not rangers, more like mercenaries who get paid not to smile. I drove east on Route 67, towards Marathon. I had to get away from the border and onto busier roads. We needed to solve the logistics. We had a key, a code, 432 and the derrick symbol, and a target, the banker. The key to the second lock was the goal. Houston, I realized, remembering the old oil lore. That's our city. And 432, it's not just numbers. It could be an old well number, or an address. In the 40s, the oil industry was the biggest front for secret operations. What if 432 is a vault number in an old, iconic building? This felt like a logical guess. An old, solid bank. Vault 432. And Edward called him the banker. We need to go to Houston, I declared. We drove all night on I-10. I felt 40 years younger. I wasn't thinking about Susan. I was thinking about survival. It was liberating. Near San Antonio, I pulled over for coffee. I had a dream about Edward, Elizabeth said. He was in that boat, George. He looked at me and said, "Don't look inside, just burn it." If Edward wanted it burned, he would have done it himself, I countered. He hid it so it wouldn't burn. He wanted it to be found, but only by the right people. Then I saw it. In the rearview mirror, about half a mile back, the big black SUV. They found us. I sped up toward the chaotic 410 loop around San Antonio. I had to hide. I saw an old, abandoned warehouse complex next to a rail line. "What are you doing?" Elizabeth cried. "Hiding our truck. Then we're switching cars. We're going to Houston in a way no one expects." We were in a stolen, beat-up Chevrolet Caprice Classic, heading down I-10. Our first target in downtown Houston was the Gulf Building. I walked in wearing my old construction vest. "We're looking for the old bank vaults, number 0432, I told the security guard, claiming to be an engineer consultant. The guard called a manager, Mr. Doyle. "You're asking about section 0432, Doyle said, looking nervous. "That's a sealed command document vault from World War II. Only one man holds the key, Mr. Raymond Crawford. He's our banker." "Where is he?" Elizabeth asked. "He's retired, lives in St. John's, a neighborhood here in Houston, but he's very ill." We left. Then I saw it. The black SUV parked across the street, waiting. They knew Doyle would talk. We fled to St. John's. We found Crawford's fortress-like mansion. I knocked. An old man in a velvet robe opened the door. Raymond Crawford. "We're from Edward on the Rio Grande," Elizabeth said. "We know about the archive and section 0432. Crawford's face twisted in pain. "Edward, he's dead. He was supposed to burn it." "Where is the second key, Mr. Crawford? They are coming for it." Crawford shook his head. "The archive is our atonement, proof that we, the soldiers, couldn't stop the traitors in command. The second key?" He stopped. He saw the black SUV creeping past his house. "They're here. They were waiting at the bank. Get inside, quickly. The key, it's not with me. It's with the man who was meant to destroy it." Crawford showed us a metal plate with an address in Galveston and a date, 12/7/1944. "Go to the judge, William Jenkins. He was to be the final line of defense." "The judge is dead," I argued. "His son, Jacob Jenkins, has the key now." Crawford yelled as heavy knocks sounded at his door. "They're not the police. Get out the back. Go to Galveston. Swear to me you will do Edward's will. Burn it or make the truth known, but don't let it fall into their hands." We sped on to I-45 toward Galveston, the city of lighthouses and sea legends. The city of the dead, Judge. We found the address, an old mansion in the East End Historic District. Jacob Jenkins, a calm lawyer in his 40s, opened the door. "I was expecting you. My father said an old soldier would come with 2 keys, but only if he named his fish." "Fish?" I asked. Elizabeth checked the notebook. Next to the lighthouse sketch was a tiny note. "Edward's final catch is the old fish." "The fish is the password," I confirmed. "We're here from Edward. We know you hold the second key." Jacob nodded. "My father left you a testament." He produced an old brass marine chronometer. "The second key is something that keeps time." Jacob opened it. Inside the lid were geographic coordinates leading back to the Rio Grande, and under them 5 words written in mercury ink. "Do not look at the fire, look at the light." The fire is the archive, I deduced. The light is something else. My father left you a choice, Jacob said, a copy of the most crucial document, hidden. If the archive is destroyed, this one document must be published. If the archive is stolen, this document is your weapon of vengeance. He pointed to a wall map. The light is the Bolivar Point Lighthouse on the bay. In the lighthouse, there's a cache. Go there and choose. Just then, a black SUV screeched to a halt outside. They knew! They waited for us to leave Houston! I shouted. I grabbed Elizabeth. Now we need the lighthouse! We ran towards the dark Bolivar Point Lighthouse. I found a small metal pin under the engraved date on the cornerstone. I pressed it. A tiny door opened to a narrow, spiraling staircase leading to the basement. Fuel is the fire, I whispered. Water is the ocean. In the basement, under the old oil pump, was a concrete hideaway. Inside was one item, a yellowed folder marked Copy SSS, Do Not Publish Until. Elizabeth opened it. It wasn't secret files. It was a letter from a U.S. Army general dated August 1944. The letter stated clearly that the archive contained a list of American agents deeply embedded in the German High Command. If this list fell into the wrong hands, all those agents would be executed. Edward and Simon hid it to save their men's lives, not to blackmail. George, if those men in the black cars are successors to those traitors, they want that list to protect themselves and ensure the truth of their betrayal never surfaces. Just then, two suits burst into the basement, one with a gun. Where is the archive? We know you found it. We destroyed it, I lied. It burned. Lies, the second suit sneered, looking at the folder. We want the archive. It's in the Rio Grande, Elizabeth said firmly, and it will never surface. The first suit aimed his gun at me. Give us the coordinates, or we leave you here, forever. I looked at the letter in Elizabeth's hand. I couldn't send these mercenaries after the lives of patriots. I grabbed the kerosene lamp. The coordinates are in my head, and if you don't back away, it won't just be the kerosene that burns. Elizabeth shoved the oil barrel, blocking their path to the letter. Let's go, George! We scrambled up the spiral stairs. The basement filled with shouting and the sound of the first gunshot. We escaped. We drove straight back to the Rio Grande. We had returned to the spot where we met. We weren't looking for the archive anymore. We had found what Edward truly wanted to pass on, the truth. He was a protector, not an adventurer. Elizabeth tore up the map and threw the pieces into the river. I will honor his will, she said. I won't destroy his life's work. But I will bury this secret so it doesn't ruin other lives. The archive must stay where it is. I cast my line into the river. I was no longer thinking about Susan. My life, which I thought was lost to divorce, had suddenly found meaning. I had found a different cargo. What will you do now? I asked Elizabeth. I'll start painting, she smiled. But I'll paint not what is lost, but what is found. And me? I'll stay here for another week, I said. She nodded. You came here to find peace, George, she said, standing up. But you found purpose, and that's much better. I watched her walk away. She didn't look like a lonely widow. She looked like a woman who had found her way. I sat alone, watching the river. Then the bell on my rod rang, hard. I pulled. It was a huge, stubborn catfish. I landed it. I looked at my catch. Then I looked at the Rio Grande. I released the fish back into the water. My final catch wasn't a fish. My final catch was the life I got back.
If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write in the comments what you would have done if you were in Michael's place.